Talk to me. Talk to me.
Hello and welcome. I'm Dan Gersten, host of Chatting with History, where you can listen into conversations I have with some of the most famous characters in the history of Western civilization. And today's guests are no exception. Our first guest is Adam, who some believe is the first person on this planet. And our second guest is Noah, who together with his family is credited with saving mankind from a global weather event. So without further delay, let's meet Adam. Adam, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dan.
One of the things I recently learned was that you actually have a last name.
That's correct, Dan. Just that there really didn't seem to be any reason to use it at the time, since nobody else was around, and certainly no other Adam. Besides, God and I were on a first-name basis, though he really didn't want to be called by his. He just kind of got off on being referred to as God or Lord. And I can kind of understand it. I mean, really now, how many people would have taken him seriously, knowing his name is Gerald?
Really? Gerald?
Yeah, who would have thought? I always seemed strange whenever I called him Gerald. Said only his mom called him that. And he certainly didn't take to being called Jerry.
His mom? God has a mom?
Why, sure. Doesn't everybody?
Well, you don't.
I know. Created from the dust of the earth and given life when God breathed into my nostrils. Which, by the way, was the first recorded case of CPR. Jerry, God, reminded me of it every minute of every day.
I made you and I cannot make you!
I really got sick and tired of it in his almightier than thou attitude.
So, again, you have a last name?
I'm sure I do, and so does Jerry.
God has a last name? I didn't know that.
Well, of course you did. Everybody knows it. It's Eden. Gerald Eden. I mean, it was his garden, wasn't it? And Garden of Eden sure had a more heavenly ring to it than Jerry's garden, don't you think? Though, as I reflect back, Jerry's garden is probably a more accurate description of what was going on there at the time, with God and Eve and the apple and the serpent.
Gerald Eden. So what's your last name?
Oh, it's Man, M-A-N. In the beginning, there were two N's, M-A-N-N. But the second N was dropped because God, being as anal as he can be, felt it was redundant. So it became Man with one N. And it's the reason why all humans are referred to as belonging to the family of man. My family. Sadly, it's about as dysfunctional as a family can get. And no one seems to remember they all came from me and are therefore related.
Speaking about everybody coming from you and being related, yeah. Come on, tell me about Eve.
Do I have to?
Is there a reason not to?
Well, I just get so worked up thinking and talking about her. She's just so irritating. And my therapist says I shouldn't put myself in a situation where I can get stressed out more than I usually am. You know, with high blood pressure and all.
You have a therapist?
Best move I ever made. Found this guy even before Eve was created. Actually got his name from the serpent, but that's another story. Anyhow, needed to resolve some issues I was having with Jerry. God. And understanding these feelings I was having related to low self-esteem and abandonment.
Low self-esteem and abandonment?
Yeah. Took me a while, and I'm not sure I have it totally worked out. Doc says it's from Jerry, God, always reminding me that I'd be nothing if it weren't for him, and how I'm the original sinner and all. And then, after creating me, he goes off while I'm sleeping and creates Eve, whom he said was for me, but I always thought he did it for himself. Add in that I don't have a mother, and it's a sure recipe for low self-esteem and abandonment issues.
Yeah, but I mean, you do have it pretty much worked out after all these millennia.
Pretty much. Doc says I really won't be okay until I stop blaming everything on God and waiting for him to make my life better. That I should start taking responsibility for my own feelings and behavior in the situations I get myself into.
Yeah, sure seems to be a lot of that going around in your family of man. I mean, not taking responsibility and, waiting on God.
Yeah. It is what it is.
Anyhow, back to Eve.
Okay, Eve. I mean, she's likable enough, I guess. Plus, in all honesty, given that I'm straight, there really wasn't much choice now, was there? I mean, it wasn't as if the garden was a swinging spot, even with all the vines hanging down. Still, she was, and still is, a real pain in the...
Pain in the side. I mean, she was, after all, created out of one of your ribs, no?
Ass! Pain in the ass! A real pain in the ass! Always was and always will be. Sorry. As for the rib, didn't feel a thing. Can't even find a scar. Gotta admit, there are times, especially when I hear her and Jerry whispering and giggling, when I wonder whether there's any truth to that story at all. Keep hearing bits and pieces about Eve being created first, and don't tell Adam. He can't handle the truth. Seriously, who needed children with those two around?
Yes, but there were children around now, weren't there?
Sure, lots of them. Something about Eve's clock ticking. I don't know, I didn't hear any ticking. I mean, how could I with her constant complaining? And it only got worse once we ate that fruit and pissed off Jerry.
Tell me about that.
Well, we pretty much had full reign in the garden. Jerry only had one rule for Eve and I, and that was to stay away from eating the fruit of one particular tree. It was located right in the middle of the garden, all by itself, so you couldn't miss it. And then there were warning signs posted all around it. Stay away from this tree, and that means you. And some Surgeon General warning, but who eats that?
Well, sure sounds like you weren't supposed to eat from that tree.
Well, duh, you think? And I was pretty much okay with that. I mean, it was his garden after all. And there certainly were enough other trees with tasty fruit. Not to mention all the other stuff you could eat. But old Eve, nah, not her. Telling her she couldn't do something was the last thing you'd want to do if you didn't want her to do it. And making something a no-no only made it more of a yes, yes for her. It was like she was obsessed. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, sounds like my ex-wife and a lot of others people's ex-wives. Yeah.
Adam, why can't we eat the fruit? Adam, what's so special about that fruit? Adam, why don't you just get me some of that fruit? Adam, eating that fruit will make my headaches go away. Adam this and Adam that, and fruit this and fruit that. It was making me sick. And then Sydney got involved.
Sydney?
Yeah, this serpent that hung around the garden as if she owned it. Seemed all she wanted to do was create trouble, and she couldn't have had a better toy to play with than Eve. Would follow her all the time, hissing things like, go ahead, eat the fruit. It's the tastiest fruit in the garden. Why else do you think Jerry doesn't want you to eat any of it? He's saving it for himself. Go ahead, eat the fruit. Well, before long, whatever resistance Eve might have had went out the door. Or would have gone out the door if there were any. Next thing I know, she comes over to me, strutting her stuff, with a smile like a cat that had eaten a canary. Only it wasn't a canary. It was fruit from that damn tree. Forbidden fruit. And she's munching on it, waving it around in front of me like some big tease, daring me to join her. Oh, Adam, you're such a pooper. Never want to do anything fun. Just want to lounge on that bench over there and watch the bears and lions play, like you're some kind of potato. Oh, Adam, I've got something else for you that I know you'll like if you just take a bite. Adam, you weasel! Get your butt over here and try some of this already! Finally went over to her, yanked the fruit out of her hand, and took a big bite just to shut her up. Besides, she was questioning my manhood.
And then what?
I guess I took too big a bite and nearly choked on it. In fact, I got a piece caught in my throat, and it's been there ever since.
Hey, I have one of those too.
Yeah, all men do. It's just Jerry's twisted way of reminding us that we better listen to him.
Yeah, but what about Eve? I mean, what did God do to her and all the generations of women that came afterwards to kind of remind them about listening to him?
See, that's just it. Took me a while to realize that when it said man was created in God's image, it wasn't just the image. It was all the other stuff as well, including God's moods and imperfections. Do you think God created other worlds before this one?
I mean, I hadn't really thought about it.
Well, he hadn't. This was his first go at it. And like many first attempts, he made lots of mistakes.
Such as?
Take that tree with the fruit. You know the fruit you weren't supposed to eat. I mean, why put it there to begin with? Why not just leave it off the list of things to create? And why put it in the middle of the garden? Why not off in some corner? The way I look at it is God made a mistake creating that tree, and there wasn't any delete or undo command. So he did his best at telling Eve and I to stay away, but really, he should have known that Eve couldn't have resisted. After all, she possessed the same curiosity as did he, not to mention bending the rules. And that goes for Sydney too, really now. Why create a serpent that only sought to provoke mischief for its own amusement? So I figure God made a mistake here as well, like he had this create a world kit that he ordered from somewhere, and when he dumped it out, the contents, he started creating, there was this tree and serpent that he didn't want and didn't know how to get rid of. That or he's got a weird sense of humor and just loves testing people, which, knowing Jerry as I do, has some truth to it.
I'm just dumbfounded. Sure it makes one think.
Yeah, I've certainly had a lot of time to think.
So again, how did God punish Eve and all the generations of women that came afterwards to remind them about listening to him?
Yeah. Well, that was another mistake. I believe he meant well. I believe he truly thought he was punishing her. But really now, ordering a woman to wear clothes? Duh. Think all he did was give her and the zillions of women who came after her a new purpose, to go clothes shopping. And then there were the shoes and the accessories. Here, I have this lump in my throat, and Eve's got a new wardrobe. Where's the justice in that? I mean, Jerry might be God, but just like most males, he just doesn't understand what makes a woman tick. Telling Eve to wear clothes? My Lord, what were you thinking?
Wow. Anyhow, it's been quite some time since you and Eve were kicked out of the garden, and, are the two of you still together?
Believe it or not, yes, we are. Guess I have this weak spot in my heart for her. And after spending a millennium or two together, you kind of fall into a comfortable complacency. Still, she's nagging me about getting married and complains about my underwear being on the floor.
Yeah, and what do you do?
I kind of chuckle. After all, if she didn't listen to Sydney and eat that apple, there'd be no underwear for her to pick up. And I've learned to practice the concept of in one ear and out the other.
Well now, we've just about run out of time, and I'd like to thank you for coming on the show. I know that I heard some things that certainly make me wonder about what was really going on in that Garden of Eden. Meanwhile, any parting comment for our audience?
Yes. I just want to say that regardless of your beliefs, and regardless of whether you believe there was a Garden of Eden and Eve and I, the fact remains that we're all related and all part of the family of man. Even the best families have disagreements. Sometimes don't get along. Still, let's remember to practice a little more love and tolerance and a lot less dysfunction. Then perhaps one day we will have gotten ourselves back to the garden.
Thank you, Adam. Words of wisdom from the first man. Now, don't go away, because after a short break, Chatting with History will be back with Noah. Until then, don't eat anything you're not supposed to.
Talk to me.